Oh, there is nothing quite like that feeling. That emotional rush that you get when your favorite team scores, when you're at a concert and you hear the opening notes of your favorite song, when the main character in your book suffers a tragedy, or when you take that first bite of your meal at your number one restaurant. We cheer, we sing, we cry, we laugh, and we savor. But we aren't supposed to do those things at work. Are we? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. I am Chris Fitzpatrick, professional speaker, aspiring game show host, and below average charity golfer. And today, I will continue our journey along the Fanship Quilt by exploring our second patch, emotional investment. If you haven't watched the first video in this series, Personal Aspiration, I hope you'll make that your next stop. And just to make it painless, I'll go ahead and put a card up so that way you can click into that video and save it for later. As always, if this or any of the content on my channel helps you or impacts you in any way, please support the channel by subscribing, by liking the video, by sharing comments and asking questions below, and sharing the video with your friends, family, colleagues, teammates, and networks. When I set out to build my keynote, Becoming a Fan, I dove headfirst into the fascinating world of fan psychology, the factors that attract, retain, and engage us as fans. And since teams and organizations also need to attract, retain, and engage people through their talent acquisition and talent management systems, I just knew that there had to be parallels between our fanship of sports teams, musicians, hobbies, film, and our organizations and our professional teams. I settled on 9 key psychological factors of fanship, and certainly one of the most powerful is the presence of emotional investment. Fans are, by their very nature, an emotional and sometimes irrational subculture. We pay high prices for tickets, TV, streaming packages, laundry, memorabilia, experiences, not because of a logical or a rational reason, but because of an emotional connection. It's just who we are. Many years ago, my wife and I went to go see the rock band Motley Crue. They were playing a show at Madison Square Garden, and they had just gotten the original lineup back together. Since my wife's and my wedding song was the band's phenomenal return hit, If I Die Tomorrow, we just had to go see them live. So there we were, in a sea of 20,000 fellow fans. And about midway through the set, the piano started to play the first notes of the legendary power ballad Home Sweet Home. And that was when the crowd took over. Without being prompted to do so, and before Vince Neil could start singing, everybody at Madison Square Garden that night started singing the first verse in a cappella unison, while the band stepped back and just listened. When we finished the verse, the place went nuts. Everyone was cheering. Some of us were hugging. Many of us were in tears. And drummer Tommy Lee just smiled and said, "That was awesome." Actually, he used 4 words and not 3, but your kids may be watching. This remains one of the most visceral fan experiences of my life, and I still get goosebumps when I tell that story. In sharp contrast, however, our culture often expects the opposite of us when it comes to our jobs. Think about it. If you were to hear someone at a sporting event or a concert being described as emotional, you would probably have visions of someone smiling, cheering, singing, chanting, maybe sulking, and you would regard that as normal behavior. You may even hold that individual in a higher regard as a fan because of the deeper connection they feel to the experience, as long as it's kept within reason, free of taunting, verbal abuse, violence, etc. But if you heard a coworker being described as emotional, you're more likely to put a negative spin on it, potentially thinking of someone who can't control themselves or who's acting inappropriately. Of course, the two atmospheres are very different. Clapping, cheering, chanting, they're all encouraged at a sporting event, but that volume of verbal or nonverbal excitement in an office space is at best distracting and at worst grossly unprofessional. There's a certain expectation for us to leave our emotions at the door at work. Emotions are metaphorically considered baggage, and detachment might even be viewed as objectivity or professionalism. But if work were emotionless, no one would celebrate the wins, and no one would be frustrated when things go wrong. Fan psychology has a lot to teach us about organizational culture and engagement, especially when it comes to respecting the very human emotions that people bring to their work, if it's within reason. That's where emotional intelligence plays a big role. Picture this. It's October 2011. I took my wife to Green Bay, Wisconsin to see our beloved Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field for the first time. And what a first experience it was. The Packers demolished the Denver Broncos 49-23. After 4 quarters, the game ended, but the celebration did not. We spilled out onto the streets of Green Bay for what felt like a giant block party. Just 2 lovebirds from New Jersey, invited to every after party imaginable, even hanging out with legendary retired Packers Frank Winters and Fuzzy Thurston. We celebrated that win for every ounce of the experience, and it brought us closer to our favorite team. When your team, at work, school, or in your organization, has a win, celebrate it. Embrace the excitement and the camaraderie that come with collective achievement. This is especially important when times are tough. Keeping people engaged and reminding them of how good it feels when you succeed as a unit. That's what celebration does. It turns moments into memories, and memories into loyalty. The tricky thing about how good the wins feel is how bad the losses can feel too. When things don't turn out the way you'd hoped, there's disappointment, frustration, sadness, even anger. Again, within reason, this isn't automatically a bad thing, because it is a sign that the members of the team truly care, and that connection can be harnessed into learning opportunities, as well as a resolve to make corrections and do better. In 1974, Stephen King published one of his defining works with the novel Carrie, but in his memoir, King described feelings of frustration and failure with the early manuscript. Convinced that the idea had no potential, King gave up on the story and threw it in the trash. Thankfully, King's wife Tabitha retrieved the pages from the waste bin, and after reading them over, she went to her husband and convinced him to stay with the project and not to take the early disappointment and frustration as signs of hopelessness. Supported by his wife, King returned to the project and transformed Carrie from a short story into a full-length novel. By 1976, that novel had sold 4 million copies and gave us one of the greatest horror films of all time, launching King into the mainstream, well on his way to earning the moniker the King of Horror. You see, disappointment doesn't automatically mean that something failed. It often means that standards were high. One of my favorite qualities of fans is the never-ending stream of optimism. Sure, there's often plenty of cynicism to go around too, but have you ever watched the NFL draft? When the team that finished with the worst record in the entire league during the most recent season announces that they are drafting an organization-shifting talent with the number 1 overall pick? The fan bases in attendance at the draft are filled with hope for the future, gleefully blinded by the optimism that maybe, just maybe, this year will be our year. Even if everyone knows it probably won't be. Trust me, I live in New Jersey. I know a lot of jet fans. Optimism is not ignorance. It's fuel for organizational culture. And emotional investment isn't something to eliminate. It's something to inspire, to engage, and to lead. So to you, the viewer, I pose the following 3 questions. What is your best story of being emotionally invested as a fan? Is your work, school, or organizational team emotionally engaged? And if so, how? Do you feel emotional investment has an important place in organizational culture? Please share your thoughts, stories, and ideas in the comment section. I'm excited to engage with you in topics like these, so please check out the other videos here on Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks. Make sure you're subscribed and you get notified of new content. Feel free to share, and remember, if you feel something at work, pride, frustration, hope, that's not weakness. That's your emotional investment.